You got the raise. You felt it the moment it hit your account. A little bigger number. A little more room to breathe. For a few days, everything feels different. Then 3 months pass. 6 months. A year. And somehow, your bank account looks exactly the same as before. Where did it go? Here's the strange part. Most people assume the answer is bad luck, or bad budgeting, or some emergency they didn't see coming. But the real reason is much deeper than that. It's not about what happened to your money, it's about what happened to your mind the second that raise arrived. Let's start with what actually occurs. Psychologically, the moment your income rises, your brain doesn't register the new number as extra. It registers it as the new normal. Almost instantly, your sense of what you deserve recalibrates. The apartment that felt fine last year suddenly feels a little small. The car that ran perfectly well now feels a little embarrassing to park next to a coworker's. The lifestyle upgrades don't feel like indulgence, they feel like catching up. This isn't weakness, it's a wiring problem, and it has a name. Economists call it lifestyle inflation. Every time your income grows, your spending grows to match it. Quietly, automatically, almost invisibly. Sound familiar? Think about the last time you got a raise or a bonus or a better paying job. Did your savings rate actually go up? Or did your rent go up? Your car payment? Your subscriptions? Your dinners out? For most people, the answer is uncomfortable. Their expenses grew just as fast as their income, sometimes faster. Here's where it gets deeper. This isn't just carelessness. It's a documented feature of how the human brain processes gains. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent decades studying how people make decisions about money. And one of his central findings was this. Humans adapt to gains far faster than they adapt to losses. A new income level stops feeling exciting within weeks. But losing that same income, even briefly, feels devastating. So your brain pushes you to spend up to your new ceiling almost immediately, just to lock in the feeling of the gain before it fades. In other words, the raise doesn't make you richer. It makes you numb to being richer faster than you'd think possible. So what breaks this cycle? It's not willpower. Willpower fades. What works is removing the decision entirely. This is where the idea of paying yourself first comes in. Instead of letting your spending expand automatically and saving whatever happens to be left over, you flip the order. The moment new income arrives, a fixed percentage moves into savings or investments before you ever see it as spendable money. Your lifestyle only gets to inflate around what remains. It sounds almost too simple, but simple isn't the same as easy, and the data backs it up again and again. People who automate their savings before their spending consistently build wealth faster than people who try to save whatever's left, even when both groups earn the exact same income. Warren Buffett has described this principle in his own blunt way. Don't save what is left after spending, spend what is left after saving. He built one of the largest fortunes in modern history, and that single reordering of priorities sits at the foundation of it. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. This isn't only about discipline, it's about identity. When your spending rises every time your income rises, you're not just spending money. You're spending your future freedom to maintain a lifestyle that was never actually necessary in the first place. You adapted to it in weeks. You could adapt to something more modest just as fast if you gave yourself the chance. Morgan Housel makes a similar point in his book, The Psychology of Money. Wealth, he argues, isn't the stuff you can see. It's the stuff you don't buy. The car's not purchased. The upgrade's not made. The number that exists precisely because you didn't let your spending chase your income. That reframes the entire question, doesn't it? The people who look wealthy are often the ones who spent the fastest. The people who actually become wealthy are usually the ones who let their income rise while their lifestyle rose much, much slower. This is sometimes called the savings gap, the space between what you earn and what you spend. It's not your income that determines whether you build wealth. It's the size of that gap and whether you protect it every time your income increases. Think about two people earning the exact same salary over 10 years. One of them raises their spending every time they get a raise. New apartment, new car, nicer vacations. The other keeps their expenses mostly flat and redirects each raise into investments. On paper, In year one, they look identical. Same job title, same income. Maybe the first person even looks more successful, with the nicer apartment and the newer car. But by year 10, the difference is staggering. The investor has built a portfolio compounding quietly in the background. The lifestyle inflator has a nicer apartment and very little else. Same income, entirely different outcome, because one of them protected the gap and the other let it collapse to zero every single time. Now picture it with real numbers. A $25,000 gap invested every year instead of spent, growing at a modest average market return. In 10 years, that's not just $250,000. It's closer to $350,000 because the earlier contributions had time to compound on top of themselves. In 20 years, the number becomes almost unrecognizable compared to what either person's salary alone would suggest. This is the part lifestyle inflation quietly steals from you. Not just the money you spend today, the growth that money would have generated for decades if it had been given the chance. There's a reason compounding gets called the eighth wonder of the world. Whether or not Einstein actually said it first, it rewards early, boring, unglamorous decisions far more than it rewards late. Dramatic ones. A raise redirected at 25 is worth dramatically more by retirement than the same raise redirected at 40, purely because of time. The gap you protect today isn't just today's money, it's tomorrow's multiplied money. Why does this feel so hard to act on, even when the logic is obvious? Because lifestyle changes almost never feel like a choice in the moment. They feel like normal life catching up with normal success. Nobody sits down and thinks, I am now going to inflate my lifestyle. They think, I've earned this. And they have. That's what makes it so effective at draining the gap. It never feels reckless. It only ever feels reasonable, one purchase at a time. This is also why cutting expenses after the fact is so much harder than protecting the gap before it forms. Once a $2,400 apartment becomes your baseline, once a car payment becomes routine, walking it back doesn't just cost money, it costs identity. Downgrading feels like admitting something went wrong, even when nothing did. That's why the moment of the raise matters so much more than any moment that comes after it. It's far easier to never raise the baseline than to lower it once it's set. This is also why so many high earners feel stuck despite making significant money. It's not a spending problem in the way most people imagine it, with reckless purchases and impulse buys. It's a quieter problem. It's every reasonable-sounding upgrade, stacked one after another until the gap between income and spending disappears entirely. So what does this mean practically for you right now? The next time your income increases, whether from a raise, a bonus, a new job, or a side hustle finally paying off, the moment matters more than you think. That is the exact moment lifestyle inflation tries to claim the new money before you even notice it's happening. The fix is to decide in advance. Before the raise even lands, choose a percentage, even a modest one, that moves straight into savings or investments the moment the money arrives. Let your remaining lifestyle grow slowly, deliberately, around what's left. This single habit, repeated over years, is the quiet difference between people who accumulate wealth and people who accumulate stuff. Benjamin Graham, the investor who mentored Warren Buffett and literally wrote the book on value investing, put it simply, the individual investor's worst enemy is likely to be himself. Not the market, not the economy, not bad luck. The gap between what comes in and what goes out, defended or abandoned, one decision at a time. There's one more layer worth understanding, and it explains why this cycle repeats itself generation after generation. Financial researcher Ramit Sethi, in his work on conscious spending, makes an important distinction that most budgeting advice misses. The goal was never to spend less on everything. It was to spend extravagantly on the things that genuinely matter to you, and cut ruthlessly on the things that don't. Lifestyle inflation skips that filter entirely. It doesn't ask what you actually value. It just expands, uniformly, into every category at once, because more money makes every option feel slightly more affordable at the exact same time. That's why the fix isn't deprivation. Nobody sustains deprivation for a decade. The fix is intention. Deciding, deliberately, which parts of your life deserve to grow with your income, and which parts should stay exactly where they are no matter how much you earn. Ask yourself something. Of everything your spending grew into over the last 2 years, how much of it would you genuinely miss if it disappeared tomorrow? For most people, the honest answer is less than half. That's the gap hiding in plain sight. Not a mystery expense, not a financial emergency, just a slow, comfortable drift that happens to almost everyone who never made a rule for the moment their income increased. So go back to that raise. The one that felt so good the day it landed. It was never really about the number. It was about what you decided to do with the space it created. Protect that space, even a little, and it compounds into something far larger than the raise itself ever was. Let it disappear into a slightly nicer version of the same life, and next year, you'll be standing in the exact same spot, wondering where it all went. The raise was never the answer. What you do with the gap it creates, that's the real decision. And that decision is the one that was always in your hands.